The family meeting had started like any other, with my brother Marcus showing up in his custom-tailored suit, my sister Amanda wearing enough designer labels to fund a small country, and my parents beaming at their successful children. I sat quietly in my worn jeans and 5-year-old dress shirt, playing my usual role as the family disappointment. Grandma's Victorian house stood proudly at the end of Maple Avenue, its weathered red brick and intricate woodwork telling stories of the past century. She'd lived there for 50 years, raising my father and later helping raise us. Now at 82 she was still sharp as ever, though my family seemed determined to paint a different picture. The development company's offer is generous, Marcus continued, spreading glossy brochures across Grandma's antique dining table. They'll build luxury condos. It's what the neighborhood needs. I glanced at my phone, checking the latest notification from my property management system. Dover Development's offer had indeed just been rejected, by me through one of my holding companies. They didn't know that over the past 5 years, I'd systematically purchased every property on Maple Avenue through various corporations, all while pretending to barely make ends meet as a struggling real estate consultant. Alexander, my father turned to me, using that condescending tone he'd perfected over the years. I know you have opinions about this, but the decision's been made. The neighborhood's changing. Grandma needs professional care. I looked at Grandma, sitting silently at the head of the table. Her eyes met mine, and I caught the slight smile she always seemed to have when my family underestimated me. She'd been the only one to know about my first property purchase, the rundown apartment building on Grove Street that I'd turned into luxury units. Now that single investment had grown into Maple Heritage Holdings, my $2.8 billion real estate empire. Professional care? I asked quietly. Like the kind Marcus arranged for Uncle Philip before he mysteriously signed over his pension. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus's jaw tightened, and Amanda suddenly became very interested in her manicure. That's ancient history, my mother cut in sharply. Philip's care was excellent. He just didn't adjust well. I pulled out my laptop, pretending to check work emails while actually reviewing the security footage from Uncle Philip's care facility. The cameras I'd had installed showed a very different story, one of forged signatures, late-night visits, and medication adjustments that kept him confused enough to sign whatever they put in front of him. The facility we've chosen for Grandma is top tier, Marcus continued, pushing a brochure toward her. Sunset Meadows has an excellent reputation. The same reputation as Wellington Care Center? I asked mildly, watching Marcus's face. Where 3 residents mysteriously changed their wills last month. Amanda's head snapped up. How do you know about Wellington? I shrugged, maintaining my carefully crafted image of the family failure. I read the news. What I didn't mention was that I owned Wellington through a subsidiary, and the new security system I'd installed had caught some very interesting late-night visits from Marcus's legal team. The point is, my father interrupted, this is what's best for everyone. The neighborhood's declining. Property values are dropping. I suppressed a smile. Property values were dropping because I'd orchestrated it, selectively purchasing and temporarily leaving certain properties slightly under-maintained. It had made the remaining homeowners eager to sell, to my various holding companies of course. Actually, Grandma spoke up for the first time, her voice clear and strong. Alexander's been helping me review my options. I'm quite comfortable here. The look Marcus shot me could have melted steel. He'd never forgiven me for walking away from the family real estate business 5 years ago, choosing instead to waste my potential on small-time consulting work. If he only knew that while he struggled to maintain their 5 properties, I'd built a portfolio of over 300 premium properties across the city. Alexander, Amanda laughed, he can barely afford his own rent. What could he possibly know about property values? I thought about my penthouse overlooking the city, purchased through one of my corporations and rented to myself at a nominal fee to maintain appearances. I get by, I said mildly. The development deal closes next week, Marcus announced firmly. The paperwork's already being prepared. I pulled up another email on my laptop, this one from my head of security. The attached footage showed Marcus and my father in Grandma's study late last night, practicing her signature. Another clip showed them discussing something called Project Legacy, involving offshore accounts and insurance policies. About that, I said slowly. There might be a problem with the buyer's inspection report. Marcus waved his hand dismissively. Dover Development's inspectors found nothing wrong. Not Dover's inspection, I replied. The one commissioned by the current owner of numbers 2 through 28 Maple Avenue. The room went silent. Amanda's designer purse slipped from her lap. What are you talking about? My father demanded. Those houses are owned by different families. Were owned, I corrected gently. They've all sold over the past 5 years. To various subsidiaries of one holding company. Marcus's face reddened. That's impossible. I would have known. I know every real estate deal in this area. Clearly not, I said, opening a folder on my laptop. Would you like to see the ownership records? Or should we discuss Project Legacy first? The color drained from my father's face. How do you know about Project Legacy? I finished. Let's just say I've been paying attention. Like I paid attention when Uncle Philip's care facility mysteriously lost their security footage the night he signed over his pension. Or when 3 residents at Wellington suddenly changed their wills to include Marcus as a beneficiary. You're bluffing, Amanda snapped, but her voice shook slightly. I turned my laptop around, showing them the security footage from last night. Marcus and my father froze as they watched themselves practicing Grandma's signature. I have more, I said quietly. Much more, including some interesting offshore transaction records that I'm sure the IRS would love to see. What do you want? Marcus demanded, his confident facade cracking. I closed my laptop slowly. First, Grandma stays in her home. Second, we're going to have a long discussion about Uncle Philip's pension and those Wellington residents. Third, I smiled. I think it's time for a change in management at the family company. You can't prove anything. My father blustered, but his hands were shaking. Actually, Grandma spoke up, reaching into her cardigan pocket. We can prove quite a bit. She pulled out a small recorder. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. I've been recording our family meetings for months now. I reached over and squeezed her hand, remembering the day she'd come to me with her suspicions about Marcus and my father. We'd worked together, gathering evidence while maintaining our facades. The sharp grandmother everyone underestimated and the failure son no one took seriously. Tomorrow morning, I said calmly. We're having another family meeting. I'll be bringing my lawyers, the complete Project Legacy files, and documentation of every property transaction on Maple Avenue. I suggest you all come prepared for a very long discussion. You'll destroy this family, my mother whispered. No, I corrected her, standing up. I'm going to save it. From itself. As I walked out of the dining room, I heard Grandma's firm voice behind me. And I expect Philip to be moved to a proper care facility by the end of the week. A real one this time. In my car, I pulled up the security feeds from the house. Marcus was already on his phone, probably calling his lawyers. Amanda was crying, my mother was frozen in her chair, and my father was staring at the family photo on the wall, the one taken before I'd walked away from their corrupt version of success to build something better. My phone buzzed. A text from my head of security. Dover Development trying to fast-track permits for Maple Avenue. Want me to shut it down? I smiled, typing back, no need. By tomorrow they'll understand that Maple Avenue isn't for sale. Any of it. Another buzz, this one from Grandma. Well played, dear. Dinner at your penthouse tomorrow after the meeting. I think we'll both need a good bottle of wine. Looking back at the Victorian house through my rearview mirror, I thought about the long game I'd played. 5 years of appearing unsuccessful while building an empire. 5 years of watching and gathering evidence. 5 years of protecting the neighborhood while my family plotted to destroy it. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight I had properties to check, documents to prepare, and a grandmother to protect. After all, that's what real success is about. Not destroying your family's legacy, but preserving it. Even if it means becoming the very thing they never thought you could be. The next morning dawned with the weight of anticipation. I arrived at my office at 6 a.m., a modern glass building downtown that none of my family knew I owned. My team of lawyers was already waiting in the conference room, along with forensic accountants and digital security experts. Good morning, Mr. Harrison. My executive assistant Sarah greeted me, handing me a steaming cup of coffee. Your grandmother arrived 10 minutes ago. She's in your office. I found Grandma seated in my leather chair, examining the city skyline from the 40th floor. Nice view, she commented, turning to face me. Much better than that cramped apartments you pretend to live in when the family visits. Ready for today? I asked, setting down a thick folder of documents on my desk. I've been ready for 5 years, Alexander. She stood up, straightening her blazer. Show me what we're working with. I spread out the evidence across my desk: photographs, financial records, security footage, screenshots, and a detailed timeline of Marcus and my father's activities. The deeper we dug, the uglier it had gotten. They've embezzled nearly $50 million from the family company, I explained, pointing to the financial records. That's not counting Uncle Philip's pension or the Wellington Care Center scheme. Grandma's eyes hardened as she examined a photograph of Marcus meeting with shady healthcare consultants outside Wellington. Your grandfather built that company on honesty, she said quietly. He'd be heartbroken. At 9 a.m. sharp, my security team reported that Marcus, Amanda, and my parents had arrived in the lobby. I had them escorted to the main conference room on the 39th floor. Let them sweat a little before discovering I owned the entire building. Ready? I asked Grandma. She squeezed my hand. Let's clean house. The conference room fell silent as we entered. Marcus, typically immaculate, looked like he hadn't slept. Amanda's designer outfit couldn't hide her nervous fidgeting. My parents sat stone-faced, but my father's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his armrest. Welcome to Harrison Global Headquarters, I announced, enjoying their confused expressions. Yes, that Harrison Global, the real estate investment firm that's been making headlines for the past 3 years. That's impossible, Marcus sputtered. Harrison Global is worth billions. $2.8 billion as of this morning. I corrected, taking my seat at the head of the table. Would you like to see my ownership documentation? My team of lawyers began distributing folders. Each contained detailed evidence of different schemes: the insurance fraud, the pension theft, the Wellington Care Center exploitation, and the offshore accounts. Before we begin, I continued, I should mention that this meeting is being recorded, and copies of all documents have been secured with multiple law firms. Any attempt to bury this will only make things worse. How long have you known? My father finally asked, his voice hollow. About the corruption. Since Uncle Philip. About your plans for Grandma. Recently. But I've been watching and documenting everything for 5 years. I opened my laptop, displaying security footage from various properties. Every meeting, every shady deal, every forged document. Amanda burst into tears. I didn't know about most of this. Marcus just said we needed to get Grandma's house for development, and the 3 elderly residents at Wellington who mysteriously named you in their wills. I asked coldly. You didn't know about that either. She fell silent, crumpling in her chair. Here's how this will play out, I announced, sliding another set of documents across the table. First, Marcus and Dad will resign from the family company, effective immediately. I'll take over as CEO, with Grandma as chairman of the board. You can't do this. Marcus started to stand. Sit down, Grandma ordered, her voice like steel. You lost any right to protest when you started practicing my signature in my own study. Marcus collapsed back into his chair. Second, I continued, Uncle Philip will be moved to a proper care facility today. His pension will be restored, with interest. The Wellington residents will have their original wills reinstated. And if we refuse? My father challenged weakly. I pressed a button on my phone. Send them in. The conference room door opened, and Uncle Philip wheeled himself in, accompanied by my head of security and 2 federal agents. Hello, brother, Uncle Philip said to my father. Long time no see. My mother let out a small scream. Marcus looked like he might faint. The FBI has been very interested in our documentation, I explained calmly, particularly the insurance fraud and pension theft aspects. They're willing to handle this quietly, if you cooperate fully. The next 2 hours were a blur of signatures, confessions, and tears. My parents signed over their company shares. Marcus surrendered his power of attorney for the Wellington residents. Amanda provided details about offshore accounts. By noon it was done. My parents and siblings were escorted out by security, their access to company assets revoked, their crimes documented but not yet reported to authorities, a sword of Damocles to ensure their continued cooperation. Well, Grandma said, as we watched them leave through the security monitors. That was quite a morning. I smiled tiredly. 5 years of planning, finally paying off. Your grandfather would be proud, she said softly, not just of protecting the family legacy, but of how you did it. You built something honest and strong, right under their noses. My phone buzzed. Dover Development officially withdrawing all offers for Maple Avenue properties. Another buzz. Confirmation that Uncle Philip was being transferred to an excellent care facility, one I'd personally vetted. What happens now? Grandma asked, watching the city spread out below us. Now, I said, we rebuild. The right way, starting with Maple Avenue. As we left the conference room, I paused by my father's abandoned coffee cup. Inside was the family photo he always carried, the one of all of us in front of Grandma's house, taken years ago when success meant something different. I slipped it into my pocket, a reminder of what we'd lost, and what we were fighting to restore. My phone buzzed again, a message from Uncle Philip. Thank you, nephew, for everything. I looked at Grandma, standing tall despite the emotional morning. Dinner at my place tonight. Real place, not the fake apartment. She smiled. Wouldn't miss it. We have a legacy to rebuild. As we rode the elevator down, I thought about Maple Avenue, about honest success, about family. Sometimes protecting what matters means becoming something your family never expected. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't in the destruction of the old, but in the careful construction of something new and better. The doors opened to the lobby, and we stepped out into the sunlight of a new day, one where truth had finally come to light, and justice had been served, not with a bang, but with the quiet strength of patient preparation and unwavering principle. 3 months after the conference room showdown, I stood in front of Grandma's Victorian house, overseeing the renovation crew. The entire street was undergoing a careful restoration, not the soulless modernization Marcus had planned, but a thoughtful revival preserving the neighborhood's historic character. My phone buzzed with a text from my security team. Spotted at Wellington again. Tried to contact resident #3. I sighed, typing back, implement protocol B, full lockdown, notify their families. Despite the agreements and evidence hanging over their heads, Marcus couldn't seem to let go. He'd made 3 attempts to access his old accounts and 2 tries at contacting the Wellington residents. Each time my security measures caught him, and each time the FBI's file grew thicker. More trouble? Grandma asked, joining me on the sidewalk with 2 cups of coffee. Marcus being Marcus, I replied, accepting the coffee. He still thinks there's a way to salvage his schemes. Inside Grandma's house, the renovation team was carefully restoring the original woodwork while updating the electrical and plumbing systems. I'd moved her into my penthouse temporarily, though she spent most days here, supervising the work and sharing stories about the house's history with the craftsmen. Amanda called yesterday. Grandma mentioned watching a carpenter repair the porch railing. She's starting therapy. Says she wants to make amends. I nodded slowly. Of all my siblings, Amanda had shown the most genuine remorse. She'd voluntarily provided additional evidence about Marcus's schemes and had begun repaying her share of the embezzled funds. And your parents? She asked carefully. Dad's drinking heavily. Mom's pretending nothing happened. They've moved to their lake house, the only property they have left that isn't tied to the company. A sleek black car pulled up, and Uncle Philip emerged from the passenger seat, maneuvering his wheelchair with newfound strength. 3 months of proper care had worked wonders. The prodigal uncle returns, he called out cheerfully. Ready for the board meeting. That was another change. I'd appointed Uncle Philip as Chief Ethics Officer of Harrison Global, a position created specifically to prevent any repeat of past misdeeds. His first act had been to establish a whistleblower protection program. The audit team found 3 more shell companies. Marcus set up, Uncle Philip reported as we settled in Grandma's kitchen. We've frozen the accounts and notified the relevant authorities. I reviewed the documents he provided. Did you see the property valuations he used? No wonder the company was bleeding money. Speaking of money, Grandma interjected, the Wellington families sent their thank you letters. The restored inheritances mean a lot to them. A notification popped up on my tablet. Marcus had just tried to access the company's servers again. The attempt was blocked, logged, and added to the FBI's growing file. He's getting desperate, Uncle Philip observed. The law firm he interviewed with yesterday rescinded their offer after receiving an anonymous tip about his history. I hadn't sent that tip, but I had a good idea who did. Amanda had been surprisingly thorough in her attempts to make things right. The neighborhood association meeting is tonight, Grandma reminded me. They want to discuss the renovation plans. The Maple Avenue Preservation Society, newly formed and properly registered, would be voting on the proposed improvements. Each restored home would maintain its historic character while incorporating modern amenities. More importantly, long-term residents would be protected from rising property values through a specialized trust I'd established. My phone rang, Amanda's number. I put it on speaker. Alexander. Her voice was shaky. Marcus just called me. He's talking about exposing everything. Says if he's going down, everyone is. Let him try, I replied calmly. Every document he has access to has been vetted. Any exposure would only reveal his own crimes. He mentioned Grandma's house, said something about contingency plans from before. I was already signaling my security team. Within minutes they reported back Marcus had been spotted near Maple Avenue, acting erratically. Amanda, thank you for the warning. We'll handle it. As if on cue, police sirens wailed in the distance. My security team had strict instructions about Marcus approaching the property. I'm sorry, Amanda said softly. For everything, I should have seen what was happening. You're making it right now, Grandma responded. That's what matters. After the call ended, we watched through the security feeds as police intercepted Marcus 2 blocks away. His contingency plan turned out to be a sad attempt to plant falsified documents in Grandma's study. Documents that would have been useless anyway, given our extensive documentation of his activities. He'll face charges this time, Uncle Philip said quietly. No avoiding it, I nodded. Sometimes protection meant making hard choices, even about family. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of renovation approvals and board meetings conducted from Grandma's dining room. By evening, as neighbors gathered for the Preservation Society meeting, Maple Avenue felt alive in a way it hadn't for years. You know, Grandma said, as we watched people arrive. Your grandfather always said success wasn't about building empires. It was about building communities. I looked at the street where I'd grown up, at the homes being restored rather than replaced. At the families who would get to stay in their neighborhoods. At the legacy being preserved rather than destroyed. I think we're doing both, I replied. As the meeting began, I stayed in the background, letting the community take the lead in their own future. My role wasn't to dictate changes, but to enable the preservation of something valuable. Not just buildings, but the bonds between people who called this place home. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from the FBI, Marcus Harrison in custody, no bail recommended. I deleted the message without replying. Some chapters needed to end for others to begin. Ready for dinner? Grandma asked, as the meeting wound down. I think we all need something normal tonight. Looking around at Uncle Philip chatting with neighbors, at the renovation plans spread across tables, at the subtle security measures protecting it all, I realized this was our new normal. Not perfect, not completely healed, but honest and moving forward. Yes, I said, I think we're ready. 1 year later, I stood on Grandma's restored porch, watching the annual Maple Avenue block party in full swing. Children played on freshly mowed lawns, neighbors chatted on restored Victorian porches, and the sense of community was palpable in the warm summer air. Marcus was serving his 3rd month of a 5-year sentence for fraud and attempted coercion. My parents had retreated to Florida, their shame and resentment keeping them far from the family they'd tried to destroy. But here on Maple Avenue, something beautiful had grown from the ashes of their schemes. Penny, for your thoughts. Grandma appeared beside me, looking elegant in her summer dress. The past year had been kind to her. Freedom from family manipulation had brought back her spark. Just thinking about changes, I replied, accepting a glass of lemonade from her. Good ones. Across the street, Amanda was helping set up tables for the community dinner. Her therapy had led to genuine transformation. She'd started a foundation helping elderly victims of financial abuse, using her own story as a cautionary tale. The Wellington families were among her strongest supporters. Uncle Philip wheeled past, giving architectural tours of the restored homes. His health had improved dramatically, and he'd become the neighborhood's unofficial historian. The restored pension had allowed him to retire comfortably, though he still served actively on Harrison Global's ethics board. Mr. Harrison, a young girl tugged at my sleeve. Mom says you're the one who saved our house. Is that true? I knelt down to her level. Your parents saved your house by being part of this community. I just helped a little. The truth was, her family had been one of many targeted by Marcus's development scheme. Now through the Preservation Trust, they had guaranteed affordable housing for generations to come. My phone hadn't buzzed with security alerts in months. The last attempt by Marcus to cause trouble had been quietly handled by federal authorities. Amanda had provided the final evidence needed to ensure he couldn't hurt anyone else from behind bars. The garden competition results are in, Uncle Philip announced, wheeling back to the porch. Mrs. Chen from number 23 won again. The neighborhood competitions had been Grandma's idea, a way to encourage community engagement and pride in property maintenance. It worked better than any homeowners association ever had. Alexander, Grandma said softly, your grandfather would have loved this. Not just the preserved houses, but the preserved hearts of people. I smiled, remembering the family photo I'd taken from that conference room a year ago. It sat on my desk now, not as a reminder of what we'd lost, but of why we'd fought to save something better. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across Maple Avenue's restored facades. Neighbors gathered for the community dinner, sharing dishes and stories. Children played tag between the tables, their laughter echoing off century-old brick walls. Time for your speech, Grandma reminded me. I'd tried to decline the role of speaking at the first anniversary of the Maple Avenue Preservation Society, but the community had insisted. As I approached the podium they'd set up in front of her house, I saw faces filled with hope and belonging, the true measure of success. A year ago, I began. This street stood at a crossroads. Today we're not just preserving buildings, we're preserving the idea that community matters more than profit, that heritage has value beyond price tags, and that sometimes the best way to move forward is to honor our past while building our future. Looking out at the gathered faces, I saw something my father and Marcus never understood. Real wealth isn't measured in property values or development deals, but in the strength of bonds between people who share a place and a purpose. To Maple Avenue, I raised my glass. Not just houses, but homes. Not just neighbors, but family. The toast echoed down the street, and as darkness fell, strings of lights illuminated porches and gardens. Grandma squeezed my hand, and Uncle Philip smiled proudly. This was our legacy now, not the broken one my father and Marcus had tried to build, but something authentic and lasting. Something worthy of the grandfather who'd started it all, and the grandmother who'd helped save it. The night ended with dessert on Grandma's porch, watching fireflies dance above carefully tended gardens. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight Maple Avenue stood as testimony to a simple truth. Sometimes the biggest victories come, not from destroying the old but from preserving what matters most. Well done, dear, Grandma whispered. Well done indeed. The end.